What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're taking a look at E.T., directed by Steven Spielberg. E.T. tells the story of a boy named Elliot and his discovery of an alien that he befriends. Okay, that's the overall story of E.T. Let's talk about it. It is really hard to believe that E.T. is going to be a 40-year-old movie really, really soon. Like most kids my age, I grew up with E.T. Now, I was never the world's biggest E.T. fan. I've seen the movie maybe a handful of times, but whenever me and my family would vacation to Universal Studios Florida, I enjoyed going on the E.T. ride. So my connection with E.T. is that I think the movie's good, but I love the ride. And now, as a 31-year-old adult, I can honestly say that E.T. as a film, it's still really, really good. And Stevens and the whimsical magic that Steven Spielberg captured with this movie, it can still resonate. It can still translate to the screen in the way that it did in 1982 when it first came out. E.T. is one of those seminal classic movies that comes along once in a generation that will capture the childhood spirit that we all once had. And we get to experience that through the eyes of this kid named Elliot, played by Henry Thomas, who I thought put on a really good, strong performance. Child actors are very, very hit and miss, and they're notorious for being very hit and miss. You're going to get child actors who are going to be really, really good, and child actors who are going to be borderline on just horrible. Henry Thomas, to me, goes into the really good category. He never comes across as cringy or annoying. He always comes across as how I would react if I had an alien friend as a kid, you know. And Henry Thomas did a fantastic job at bringing this kid Elliot to life. Like, you believe in his amazement, his wonder, his horror, his shock, and his disbelief when he first discovers ET, and the growing friendship and bond that forms between Elliot and ET is the strongest part of this film, and how they essentially become a symbiotic relationship in a way. I thought that stuff was really well handled, and I thought it was really, really good. But in addition to the Elliot and E.T. relationship, you also have E.T. forming a bond with his little sister Gertie, played by a very young Drew Barrymore. It's actually Gertie who teaches E.T. how to talk and say words. So like Gertie and E.T. have their own little relationship to themselves. If I have a criticism, it's the older brother Michael. He doesn't really have much of a relationship with E.T. aside from just being part of the gang. I mean, I would have liked to have seen maybe a few scenes of how E.T. and Michael would have formed their own little separate bond and all their own little separate thing. But we don't really get that. I thought that was like a missing element that I personally would have been curious to see how E.T. and Michael would have bonded, given that Michael is, someone who's in his teens and he's more older than his brother and his sister. I would like to. He comes across more as just the older brother who, when he needs to like rescue something or do something, he's right there. Like, that's his primary function, and to just be like a typical older brother who picks on his brother and his sister, which he does frequently throughout this movie. But when but of course, when all three of them, discover ET as one, that's where the relationship as a whole, I think, really works. So yeah, that stuff I enjoyed. I also enjoyed Dee Wallace, who plays the mother Mary. It's Dee Wallace. She is a horror icon in terms of the horror community, and seeing her in this movie, I thought was actually pretty cool, and I thought she did a fine job playing the mom. Um, this movie also kind of, sort of, has human villains, or it gives the illusion of having human villains in the form of the U.S. government trying to find out what ET is and what ET does. I don't think I would have needed this component, to be honest with you, especially when all is revealed in the third act and you find out that they're just scientists, not really doing anything villainous. Through a good portion of the movie, Spielberg gives these people a very ominous and very scary tone to them. But again, when we actually see them, they're just regular scientists. They're not villainous. They're not doing anything villainous or trying to create any issues with anything. Um, to me, it feels like Spielberg was trying to avoid the trope of having the typical human villain in a science fiction movie, where where you have these grounded, normal characters that are enthralled by the alien, and then you have the other side of the spectrum, these scientists who want to dissect this alien and try and harness power for their own personal needs. We don't really get that in this movie. We just have scientists that want to experiment on ET. but they don't come across as wanted to do for any villainous need, just more out of a curiosity standpoint. So I guess that component is all right. I don't necessarily think I would have needed it, to be honest with you. I mean, it does create the iconic scene of both Elliot and E.T. dying simultaneously together, with E.T. dying and Elliot surviving, and you get that great moment where E.T.'s chest starts to light up red, and he starts to say E.T. phone home, and Elliot starts to go crazy. I mean, you do get that iconic, really good moment, and which also leads to the most iconic moment in this entire movie, in the famous flying bicycle scene, which even to this day, it's still mesmerizing how they were able to pull that off by 1982 standards. And John Williams' score is just so... How that score can not just put a smile on your face or give you goosebumps is beyond me. The score of this movie is so iconic. It's just so ingrained in your head, that da 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 da. Great stuff. This is when John Williams was at the height of his powers as a composer, creating these iconic scores that you could just hum in your head and hum out loud, and someone's going to instantly recognize what it was. And that's the impact of E.T. Great stuff. From an overall production standpoint, this movie is beautifully done. Cinematography is fantastic. Steven Spielberg's direction is always fantastic. It's never bad. Steven Spielberg couldn't put together a bad movie if he tried. The man is just too talented. The overall special effects in this movie are outstanding. What they did from 1982 standards with just basic animatronics and puppetry, especially for the look and design of E.T., is fantastic. They made it look as realistic as possible. And I also like the look of E.T.'s mothership as well. Like, it doesn't look anything grand or it doesn't look anything grandiose, but it looks like an alien spaceship that I can envision coming down to Earth. And how they're able to pull that off with the special effects of the time, absolutely mesmerizing. Cannot praise it enough. So, yeah. There's more to talk about when it comes to E.T., but those are just my overall general thoughts on the film. I overall like it a lot. It has a lot of fun, iconic moments that still stand the test of time. It has really good, solid performances by a very talented cast. I mean, yeah, it does have some things that I didn't really care about, but not enough to say, oh, I hate it. It's just more or less just nitpicks that I would have fixed a little bit. But overall, as a final grade, E.T. for me is going to get a solid 9 out of 10. I highly recommend giving E.T. a watch, because 40 years later, it still has that same magic, to me at least. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on E.T. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like this video and subscribe, and I will check you back next time for more.